I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. We do. I presented to the community last night a couple updates, but the big announcement was that our board approved the bids, accepted the bids for our stadium repairs project, and we are going to be proceeding with turf. So it was amazing that the bids actually came in only $70,000 apart when we were expecting that to be closer to 5 to 700,000. So it's affordable, it's doable, and it'll look completely different next year. Yeah. Yeah, so the main issues were we were getting ready to resurface the track, so it was time to do that. And we've had a lot of issues with concrete heaving, fence post heaving, cracking, that sort of thing. And so we did a soil study, which is called a geotechnical investigation, where they drilled all over the track and field and basically discovered there wasn't a drainage system under the football field and there wasn't a layer of gravel or an aggregate base under the track. And so then we had to decide, do you just put another surface on top of this and let these issues come up again, or do you fix it? And that's when the board was like, we got to do it right. We got to bid this out and replace everything. So it's going to be a huge project, but we found a way to do it without raising property tax rates, using some reserves. We had almost $2 million in health and life safety violations. Which is not a good thing, but it is at least a way to fund it and get it done right. About half of it. And so we've kind of earmarked $1 million of reserves, and then we have some working cash funds that we can use. But I don't think we will. I mean, we're still several $100,000 under what we budgeted. So there's an opportunity for us to go ahead and use more of the reserves and spend down and, not have to use property taxes. Yeah, that's been the big question. So we had coaches start planning in November for all contingencies when we found out about these issues because it was an emergency health life safety issue. And we're like, we got to start planning now. So reached out to our neighboring school districts, Clinton, Tri-Valley, reached out to Wesleyan. So we kind of have some practices all over the place. You'll see kids in the halls, kids in the streets, that sort of thing. Um, but we've got a plan in place. We really wanted to be able to host at least senior night, but we can't. The contractors are like, this is not safe, right? We've still got all the holes where they drilled to and mounds from that. So a little inconvenient for the track season, but it'll be worth it in the long run. No, but it will be in the next few weeks. Yeah, and track starts March 3rd. Yeah. PJ Hare is our construction manager. Of course, there's bids all over the place, but AGT that did Clinton's turf is the turf designer. And then we've got Stark will be here doing most of the excavation work, which is a big part of it too. I know we've been designing it and I actually shared a sneak peek of it last night. So if you've been in our gym, think honeycomb. Um, so we've got, I know, so it's really cool. And the design is not 100% final, but I think it's really close. We've been working on it for a month or so, and we've all been joking, right? Like, we're never going with turf. That's going to be too expensive. And so I'm glad we spent the time we did on it. I think it does. It's one of those projects you didn't really want to have to do because when you're talking about excavation and, there's just a lot of unknown issues. But, we've updated all the furniture in the classrooms, right? We've installed a lot of technology. We've got a new gym, a new office. Like we have really dedicated a lot of resources to this. And I just feel like, kids now when they come to our school are like, wow, I didn't know this was in Heyworth, right? When they come to our gym, and it's going to be the same feeling at the stadium. And so it's just really exciting for our kids and our community. Just that we'll be sharing pictures with the public. We closed the track and made that announcement. A lot of people in town walk on it all summer, but we'll be back in action next year. Sure. So it came up kind of abruptly, but all school boards voted on the resolution and put it on the ballot for April 1st. And this is one of the things I shared, just the factual information on with the community last night. But increasing sales tax by 1% to be split among the schools. And for Heyworth, that's about $1 million a year. So it's a significant amount of money. And all those online and Amazon purchases went into that a few years back. Making that number much bigger. And then we can basically only use it for facilities, school safety, mental health, and to lower property taxes. And so we've been having those early conversations about what would we do if this passes. I think for us, the big part would be at least a third, probably closer to half of it would go towards paying off debt or paying for things so property tax rates go down. Because we've already invested so much in facilities, that need isn't there as much. The needs that we do have would be mental health, so more counselors for students who are struggling. Of course, there's always things like, HVAC repairs and roofs, but no major, new building or new, theater, that sort of thing we don't even have the space for it really. To me, that's huge. That's probably our number one student issue. And there's lots of reasons that contribute to that. But we have one counselor for over 500 students here at the junior senior high, and about the same at the elementary. And you just think about, the things kids are dealing with, and life is just challenging even as adults, and as a student, you're learning those regulation skills. And so for us to be able to provide that support would be amazing. Yeah, I mean, it can range from your everyday worries, right? It can range from being an overachiever and a perfectionist. Like there's things on that, but then there's kids living in homes with substance abuse and physical violence and kids who are self-harming. And I would say the self-harm piece seems to be higher than it ever has been. And that's the part that worries you, as a leader. I think we would have to add at both levels. For us, then the challenge, maybe there would be a small facility need, because I'm thinking, where would I put them? Because they have to have private space and we're pretty full to the brim, but we would find a way, right? Because that is something that even our own counselors are overwhelmed with the caseloads they have, right? And it takes a toll on them too. And so for us, I think we would need at least one at each level, if not two. Yeah, I think it would at least allow us, our staff, not to be completely overwhelmed that are working with the students now. But the big piece for me long term is teaching kids those social emotional skills early on, recognizing how they're feeling, how to respond. Like that goes through your system, right? If you can build those skills and get into classrooms and teach all kids this, as adults, we could use some reminders, right? To me, that's going to get you the longest term reward. Yeah, that's definitely the reality. And for the youngest ones, for a kid who is dysregulated and doesn't want to be at school, is scared, is fearful, is anxious, I mean, that could take one counselor 3 or 4 hours of their day. So you got to think about the kids we aren't able to serve, right? When one kid is tying up the counselor over and over. And then there are some alternative placement environments that specialize in this, but they're all full and kids have been on waiting list over a year. So you have to find something to do within your district because there aren't opportunities or seats available outside. Yeah, I definitely think it's going to take a bigger approach, and maybe even at a state level, funding some of those things differently, allowing different licensure flexibilities for counselors instead of having to have a school counselor license, having a social work or whatever. So I think it's going to take a broad approach like that. But in addition, there's a lot of kids that need medical treatment and mental health treatment intensive beyond the school setting. We're trying to make it a safe place so everyone can learn, but to actually do the deep therapy to fix and resolve the issues is much more challenging. We'll be working on our 10-year plan next year, but for us, the big upcoming things, the junior high HVAC system is really dated and at the end of life. We did bid it out a couple years ago, and it was estimated to come in around 300,000. It came in around 900,000, so we decided not to proceed at that time. And then our geothermal at the elementary, a lot of pumps, a lot of replacement. It's just getting near the end of its life. But for us, not major additions, things that we need unless something happens and, population growth occurs. But those are the big things. There is a website, April 1 cent info, april1cent.info, that has all the factual information from all the districts and what money can be used for, what it can't, that sort of thing too. Yeah, download the Heyworth Hornets app or on our website at husd4.org. Well, this big project has made us amend our budget, of course, because, that's about $4 million. So we are in the process of amending our budget and really, a lot of our effort has been focused around wrapping up winter stuff. So our boys basketball team won that last night. So they'll be playing Leroy, a rival, on Friday for the championship. And then kind of getting ready for spring sports, and we're all ready for that. I think the big thing, and I was at a full day session this week, and our board just approved a new policy for artificial intelligence. So I think trying to, condense my thoughts, but this is probably the biggest thing for schools since internet, right? And it's changing the way we teach, it's changing the way kids learn, conduct research, and it's changing so quickly that we're trying to manage how do we keep up. And so I was just talking to one of my directors this morning about funding teachers for these Google AI classes to do over the summer if they want to, right? And it's like, how do we stay ahead of this? How do we make sure we're responsibly using AI, right? Um, and how do we use it to become more efficient to get our nights and weekends back, right? Because there are some things we can do with it that would help relieve some of those extra hours that teachers have. But also you still have to have the human review piece of it. So AI, I think, is going to be the big talk for the next at least year or two. Yeah, so our policy is really on the responsible use side and for students using it when you have permission, right? And so teachers teaching kids how to write prompts and then how to review that information. It really takes me back to, the very beginning of the internet and how do you know what's true and how do you know what's not, right? And what's a credible source. And so it's doing a lot of those things again with AI, but also for staff, like kids learn this stuff fast and they're out there finding every way they can to use AI, right? And then they're probably the most efficient users of it. But how do we get ahead of the game and know how to use it to make us more efficient, make us better educators, that sort of thing? Yeah, I mean, with any good always comes the bad and the discipline issues and teaching responsible use. But I think we have an opportunity we haven't had before to personalize learning. And so putting in a student's, and we did some of this earlier this week, you can put in data that might take us weeks to analyze, right? We can dump all this data in there, and the third graders are struggling with this concept. And what do we give them? And in 7 seconds, it's shooting out exactly what they need to be taught or retaught, right? And you can do that on an individual basis or a wide scale basis. And it's just making us more efficient. And there's so much available. For us, it's going to be identifying which ones are the best to use, right? Because now there's so many tools. It's like, oh no, where do we go with this? So a little bit overwhelming, but a lot of opportunity. Yeah. It's not as much in education, but we did talk about, there were probably 30 jobs on the screen that I hadn't really thought about, some of them like paralegal, right? And we talked a lot about low knowledge workers, right? Because if a system can get you that information quickly, do we need a person to do that in customer service? So a lot of ours is human interaction in the field that I'm in. But I think there's definitely implications for completely transforming what we do. And I'm thinking teacher aide and paraprofessional, one-on-one tutoring is that AI, and the paraprofessional is supervising and monitoring and making sure the kid is using it differently, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'll let her know you said that. So she was at the session with us, and I mean, her eyes were just like, this is amazing. Like, she just always feels like she's behind, right? It's one person for 1,000 kids and 100 staff members, and she's just plugging in stuff, right? Like nonstop. Think about the time we spend creating pacing guides. Like, what should you can put in, these are the books we use, this is the grade level, these are the state standards, and we need you to create a pacing guide. And we've spent hundreds of hours, and it did it in, 10 seconds. Mm. But you still need somebody to get that information in there and to communicate it to staff. So I think she's safe for now.